Hello everyone, welcome to another doll customizing video with me, Akin. Before we start, of course, shout out to my coffee members. Roger, Sinbilops, Heather McCormick, Ruby Rouge, Warren G, Start Planting, Mel, Awkward Burb, Invisible Bear, Mel Again, Hanu Matis, Star with the Emoji, Jasmine, Magazine, and Steffi MC. Thank you so much for your support, and if you would also like to do the same, the coffee link is in the description down below. Thank you. If you like doll customization, Halloween is a time you should look forward to because you can expect doll artists here on YouTube come together for a collaboration and you get to enjoy our videos back to back like a feast. Fortunately, this year is no different. For my Halloween doll this year, I want to make a zombie. Not just any zombie, a zombie who is a farmer. I don't know how I got that idea, probably from Plants vs Zombies, and I just combined those two things together. Not only that, I want this character to have 4 arms. I think that would be a fun body modification to do. Also, if you were expecting me to make him big and beefy, sorry to disappoint, but I'm not gonna do that. The character is gonna be a lanky guy because he's a zombie, and making a doll big and beefy takes too much time and effort, so let's get into it. For the base, we'll be using Nathan Roth from Monster High, mainly because he has those exposed muscle details, and clearly I have to start utilizing more complete Monster High dolls, not just the heads. But it has a problem, the knee joints are busted. I got another Nathan here and it has the same exact problem. I think it's because the doll is top heavy, considering the long hair and the tail, so we're gonna have to do something about it. For now, let's start prepping the doll by cutting the hair as close to the scalp as possible. Dunk the head in hot water for about 30 seconds before yanking it off the body. With pliers, I rip off the horn. Scrape off the remaining stubbles using a flat-headed metal tool through the neck hole. Extract the excess hair with some tweezers. There is so much of it, it's almost unbelievable. Now we can erase the factory paint with pure acetone. Slice off the ears cause they don't match my vision. They would make really cute elf ears or fawn, so let's save them just in case I want to do something like that in the future. We're done prepping the doll and we can put the head aside for now because we're gonna take care of the body first. If you watch my videos, you know my workflow. First, let's address the extra pair of arms which I will harvest from this legless Heatburn's body that also has a Jackson Jekyll's hand for some reason. Anyway, let's mark and cut the part we need. Sometimes you still have to use the hacksaw because the cutting disc doesn't cut deep enough. The front and back plates come off, not exactly what we want, but this actually gives us the opportunity to sand down the insides of the shoulder sockets. So when we paint it later, the paint won't rub against the shoulder socket so much it gets scratched off. Making 4 arm characters is nothing new in the doll customizing world, but most are done by drilling holes across the obliques and attach the extra arms with elastics. I'm not gonna do that. I want to keep the original joint mechanism, kinda ironic because years ago I was more experimental and hellbent on making my own joints, but now it's like, keep the joints as they come no matter what. Now we can superglue the front and back plates back together. Be careful not to accidentally superglue the shoulder joints in place. This is a shoulder part, so obviously it's shoulder width, but we need it to be oblique width. So I'm gonna take out some more of its material to make it flatter and split it down the middle to reduce the width. There are 2 parts now, kinda inconvenient but it should be alright. Do you see the vision? I continue by measuring and marking how much we should take out from the main body. Then I mark where I should cut the knees. For the transplant, I could use the knees from the Heat's body just to utilize more parts from it. But I also have this lower half of a Dracula's body. It's from G2 and the knees have better proportion and work better too, so I'm gonna use them instead. If you do doll body modification, you will most likely have a lot of discarded parts waiting to be repurposed, and this is one of those times. Now we can start tearing the main body apart. I always wondered how the tail was attached because you can't just simply pull it off, so it's actually looped over a bar on the inside, and to completely remove the tail you have to get rid of that bar, which is what I'm doing here. Then I get rid of the original knees. Harvest the knees that we're gonna use. For your information, the G2 body is made out of different kind of plastic and epoxy doesn't stick as well to it, at least compared to the G1 body, but most of the time you can get away with it though, so it's not exactly a problem, just something to keep in mind. Now let's fill the cavities caused by the deconstruction with epoxy. For the lower torso cavity, first we fill it with epoxy. Then while it's still wet, press down the bases of the extra arms on it to leave impressions, so when the epoxy is cured, you know exactly where to place them. Kinda like seats for those parts. After the epoxy has cured, I make all the epoxy surfaces even-ish with a rasp. Then I drill holes in the leg parts so we can properly reconnect them. For the connectors, I use pieces of acrylic rods, and let's try assembling the legs to see how they look. Look pretty good, they're even and straight-ish, pretty sure the doll can stand on his own. Now let's set them permanent with super glue. Then I superglue the extra arms in place. Crazy how my relationship with superglue has changed. I used to hate superglue so much. I drill a hole in the torso and stick an acrylic rod in it like so. I shove pieces of aluminum foil to shield the shoulder joint mechanism. Now we can apply the epoxy. We still have to fill the one last cavity in the upper torso. Quickly rotate and bend the shoulder joint so they won't get stuck after the epoxy is cured. The knees are too thick, so I shave them down to match the rest of the legs. This looks about enough. Moving back to the torso, I trim the acrylic rod and roughen the epoxy bases with a rasp. Then I drill a hole in the top torso, but more to the front because the acrylic rod isn't perfect center. Once we get the placement right, we can super glue it in place. Then we can even out the gap with epoxy. Conceal the seams on the legs. I continue by applying more epoxy here and there to really define the new silhouette. Here's what the new silhouette looks like. It looks promising. Now we can move on to cosmetic sculpting. I prep the surface with a rasp. Because we reconstructed the torso, we couldn't keep the exposed muscle details, so now I have to resculpt them myself. Let's start by marking the placements. Now that we got the idea, I begin by restoring the pecs. Then the exposed abdomen muscles on one side. The abs on the other side. The other extra details. We're done with the front, now let's do the back. That's pretty much it for the sculpting. Now we can get to sanding, starting with a rough grit sandpaper to take out large bumps and even out the surface. For the crevices, I like to use the sandpaper glued around a popsicle stick so it's like a very abrasive nail buffer. Next, I use some fine sanding sponge to make all the surface nice and smooth, almost like factory made. I rinse the body, and now let's address the exposed muscle details on the arms and legs. Instead of sculpting them, I'm gonna carve them out using a free carving knife and try my best to follow the original flow. Remember what I said about G2 body being made out of different kind of plastic? A small piece of epoxy flaked off of it, but it's not a big deal, so let's keep going. Always be careful when you're using a knife because, yeah. Now we can paint the body. I'm just gonna do the same color as the original skin tone or something close to it. Only needed 4 layers, so much less than usual. Then we paint the exposed muscle parts. Here's what the body looks like after being painted. I think it looks pretty cool. Now let's seal the paint with 2 coats of this matte varnish spray. I continue by blushing the body with soft pastels because I think it still looks pretty flat. After blushing, I give the body 2 more coats of the matte varnish spray to seal the body blushing. And we're done with the body. It took me about 10 days to get to this point. Let's reattach the head. The body turned out a little too blue. We're gonna have to paint the head to match. Cover the body with a plastic bag. For a second, I wanted to sculpt him human ears, but I'm also planning to give him medium length hair, which will cover the ear, so I decided not to go through with the idea. Anyway, let's paint the head. The head has pretty defined eye molds, so I paint them white to hopefully save time. I leave it overnight to let the paint dry completely before giving the head 3 initial layers of Mr. Super Clear UV Cut Matte to seal the paint and prep the surface. As usual, I give the face initial blushing with soft pastels. Then I give the lips some color. I gave the face another layer of MSC before shading the scleras and sketching the irises. I bust out the black watercolor pencil early on to start defining the eye lines. I also map out the eyebrow, yes, singular. Spray the face with another layer of MSC, then define the facial features more. Draw on the eyebrow hairs. With a dark purple pencil, I add the water lines. I applied another layer of MSC and now we can color the irises. I decided to use acrylic paint because I don't have enough gray pencils to make a decent gradation. I start with dark gray for the base. Then I go over them again with lighter gray. I thought I wanted him to have pupils, but he looks really cool without them. His eyes are more cloudy that way, so let's go straight to dotting the eye shines. I sprayed it one last time with a generous amount of MSC to seal the new face. This face up only needed 7 layers of MSC. That's less than usual. Let's get rid of the plastic bag that's covering the body. Looks nice, yay! Moving on to the hair, I already made green acrylic yarn wefts. Why green? Because of leaves and plants. Let's start gluing them from the bottom of the back. Then let's trim it, about neck length. Then I just work my way up, gluing more wefts, trimming them and fine-tuning them. I'm giving him a middle part, so I just glue wefts that will later get flipped in the opposite directions to make the hair parting. Here's what the hair parting looks like, one of the cleanest I've ever done, I think. Then I conceal the gaps between the hair parting and the rest of the hair with more wefts. I apply water to the hair using a brush to tame it and let it dry completely. I trimmed the wefts of the hair parting just now because I have to make sure everything looks right. Then I give the hair a hot press to shape it better, and I even try to make parts of it flick out to make the hair have more interesting texture. I think I did too much, so let's tame and hot press the hair for the second time. Now this is more like it. He looks like he's about to sing. Cause there was something about the way the blue lights were shining, bringing out the freedom in your eyes, and I was too busy watching you going wild. Let me stop. Also, I don't know if the camera picks it up, but the face has become shiny. It's not sticky, just shiny. And this is like 3 days after I applied the last layer of MSC. How the fuck can we ever tell that MSC would give us a good result? I sprayed the MSC during cool dry days, so there's literally no reason for it to fuck me over, and yet it still did. What the fuck? Anyway, this is what the doll looks like next to the original Nathan Roth. He's only a bit taller and the proportion isn't off. Yay, I'm patting myself on the back. Moving on to the clothes, let's make overalls because farmers. For the fabric, I got a few options here. I decided to go with this. This is actually excess fabric from my sister's dress that I shortened years ago. Even the plackets are still there. Here's the front pieces. I'm gonna snip the pocket seam allowances and glue them down before sewing them on top of other pieces of fabric. Trim the excess fabric to complete the front pieces. The pockets are fake, but they look convincing. Now we can sew the front crotch together. I added the fake fly detail and sew the back pieces. I top stitched the sides and hemmed the leg holes as well before sewing the waistband. Then I glue down the waistband so it can have a finished edge, but we're not gonna top stitch it just yet. I sew 2 layers of fabric together in a narrow trapezoid shape. Trim the seam allowance and turn it right side out. I top stitch the edges. Glue it on the center of the waistband like so. Now we can top stitch the waistband, attaching the front panel in the process. I added a pocket on the front panel. This one is real, then let's sew the butt seams together. I decided not to do a back opening and instead just making the waistband a bit wider. Let's see if it fits the doll. Yup, the butt still went through, all good. Now we can trim the seam allowance and sew the inner legs together. For the straps, they're just 2 strips of fabric with the long sides hem, and I glue the tips on a piece of fabric like so. Then I place another piece of fabric on top before sewing all the sides except the one where the straps are coming out. Be careful not to accidentally sew the straps. Trim the seam allowance and turn it right side out. If you do everything right, it should look something like this. I top stitch the edges and now we can sew it on the back center of the waistband. I got these doll size overall buckles as freebies when I bought a lot of doll buckles years ago. I'm so glad I finally get to use them. Anyway, here I'm poking holes in the upper corners of the front panel so we can insert the back parts of the buttons. I don't have the tool to properly install the actual buttons, so I'm just gonna super glue them in place. They're still gonna work. I put the overalls on the doll, insert the straps through the buckles, and mark how long they should be. I remove the overalls, place where the buckle should be, and sew accordingly. Sewing footage. Doing this on a machine was really scary. I don't even know why I didn't just hand sew these parts. The stitches look like shit, but hey, they're done and it was the last step, so let's finish the overalls by trimming the excess straps and seal the ends with glue. The overalls turned out pretty great. Too bad we have to destroy them. Well, yes, he's a zombie, we can have him wear new and clean overalls. I also thought about giving him a shirt, but that would cover all the exposed muscle details I worked so hard on. And can you imagine sewing 4 doll sleeves? Ew. I'm gonna mark which parts of the overalls I should take out. I continue by making big and small cuts here and there. And then I use a rasp and sandpaper to really make the cuts and edges distressed and tattered. To really weather the overalls, I apply watered down acrylic paint. I mainly use brown and green. It looks more like a pattern than weathering, but I still like how it looks and we're actually done with the overalls now. Let's move on to accessories. I got this Nathan Roth's cap and here I'm slicing off the spikes because we don't need those details. Then I patch the holes with thin layers of epoxy. I cut out part of the brim just to make the cap more interesting, I guess. I stick the cap on a bottle with some blue tack to hold it so we can paint everything in one go. I paint the cap in tan color. Here I'm painting a leaf on the front side of the cap so we got a design going on. Then using very diluted black paint, I give the cap a dark wash. Dark washing is very effective to really bring out the details. Then I do some dry brushing with a bit of green paint on some parts of the cap. For the shoes, these are also Nathan Roths and I'm gonna paint them tan, just like the cap. Then I paint the details different colors like the soles, eyelets, and shoelaces. I give the shoes a dark wash and some green dry brushing. I continue by applying 3 coats of watered down matte varnish to the cap and shoes to seal the paint. The cap and shoes turned out pretty awesome. Next, I wanna make a rake. For the handle, I'm gonna use this acrylic rod which I already cut to size, and here I'm sanding it. For the rake's head, I'm gonna cut parts of this hair comb. It's one of my big brain moments. The comb teeth, well, tines now, they have rounded tips, so I'm just gonna trim those parts. Then I drill 2 holes in the center so we can connect the head to the handle with wire. Apply some epoxy to make it look nicer. And now we can paint the rake. I bought this miniature bucket and here I'm sanding it to prep the surface before painting it. Now we can seal the rake and the bucket with watered down varnish. What's the bucket for? It's where he puts his crops. Here I'm hot gluing a piece of sponge to fill most of the space. I bought a bunch of miniature vegetables and they're pretty expensive. I spent like $8 for all of this. But Akin, $8 isn't that much. Do I have to remind you that I'm Indonesian? That's what I thought. Shut up. Why don't you make those miniatures yourself then? To make a long story short, I don't want to. Anyway, here I'm arranging them before hot gluing them in place. I think this turned out really cute, like a bouquet of crops. He might be rotting, but his products are fresh. And with that, we can call it a doll. I name him Dirk. The participants of the 2024 Halloween doll collaboration are me, Edge Alley Crafts, I Could Do That DIY, our lovely host Kira's Workshop, the Heather Dolls, Valkyrie's World, and Jackie O. If you happen to watch my video first, please watch my friends' too because look at this lineup. These dolls are amazing and deserve your attention. So what do you think of my doll? Do you like him? Do you not like him? Let me know what you think of him in the comments down below. I had fun working on him, it wasn't too stressful, everything went smoothly, except the face suddenly turned shiny part, but all in all, I think he turned out pretty great. There is no real reason why I made him have 4 arms other than why not, which is the best reason to do anything. Also, can you imagine how productive he would be as a farmer with 4 arms? And this is it for my entry of this year's Halloween. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to. See you in the next one. Bye!